Hello, and welcome to the Unscripted Pharmacist. I am joined today with Shana Hussin, who's a registered dietitian. I have never had a, shall we say, fulfilling conversation with a dietitian, and I think this is going to be the first. No, you guys are, you're an oddity, because I'm arguing with them, typically in a hospital setting, going, no, this consistent carbs is it's actually detrimental. And typically a dietitian is pushing shakes, Glucerna and Ensure for these patients in-house. But you are very different. You are definitely one of a kind, unique dietitian that actually makes a difference and helps people. Tell me how you got here.
It's so interesting. And I've gone through a lot with my parents over the last 6 months with having to be hospitalized and being in the broken system. My mom actually passed away in February of stage 4 pancreatic cancer. But of course, like you said, what did they send her home with after her, oncology visits? A bag of Ensure. I was like, Mom, do not drink this. Like you.
Oh my gosh.
Yes, it's got some crappy protein in it, but it's got all kinds of cancer it's like the worst thing you can give a cancer patient. And then, we'll get back to my backstory, but I just have to tell you, like, my dad just came out of the hospital last week. So he kind of went downhill after my mom passed away, and he's got all these cardiology issues, and he was hospitalized for 11 days. And so I haven't worked in the conventional system in years. So I'm thinking it's got to be a little bit better.
But you still have all your hair. You haven't pulled it all out, because I watched you on a really cool podcast with Thomas Siegfried. Talking about cancer. Yeah. That must have been difficult.
Gosh. Well, right. And it's cancer patients are very, they drive the system, it's so financial for cancer patients, and this is a whole nother school of, big topic there. But you're not given many choices. You're looked at as completely crazy if you go out of the system at all, and if you defer from what the oncologist recommends. But my dad was in the hospital. He was placed on a cardiology a cardiology diet, or a heart healthy diet. And of course, that's low sodium, low fat. And one day I walked in and he had a brownie and a Jello cup for lunch, because it was low fat, it was under the fat, and it was under the saturated fat, I should say, and under the sodium. I'm like, you've got to be kidding here. And the dietitian came in, and she, of course, didn't know I was a dietitian. So I'm like, yeah, please come in. I've been working on him for 40 years now. Do your best. And, she, of course, had the heart healthy packet. And I took pictures of it. I'm like, low saturated fat, low sodium, like that's all they cared about. And they were promoting like canola oil and corn oil and soybean oil, and don't eat any saturated fat. And I was like, oh my goodness, my dad got sicker while he was in the hospital. But anyway,
it's not an option, is it? The right diet is not an option. It should be like, hey, would you like to go home early? Would you like to go home several days early? Here's a low carbohydrate. Hey, and guess what? If you don't want to eat, you should have that option. They will lock you up if you do that.
Right. Yeah. Fasting. Oh my gosh. That is so weird. Don't skip.
You can't go home until you eat.
Eat this brownie and Jello cup and say, it was wild. And it just like reinforced why I cannot ever work in the conventional system.
Yeah. You would get fired.
Yeah,
it wouldn't go very far.
Right at the bottom, it's endorsed by the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. I'm like, how can you be this behind? I don't understand. Well, I do understand it. It's driven by money.
It's money, yeah. And A&D is certainly one that loves to take money from food industry.
But then they'll say, no, like this is, this funding doesn't have anything to do with our
Doesn't affect us. Doesn't affect what we say.
So anyway, I'm Shana. I do not work in the conventional system.
Yay. Glad you left.
Yeah. The dietetics world is pretty wild.
Okay. So you discovered a while ago, and this is not uncommon, that you found your own personal cure to your own health problems. And I think it's fascinating for a dietitian that may have had issues and trying to make recommendations for their patients to follow, and they're having the same trouble. And you're like, wait a minute. So how did you get to obviously healthy, right? Where did you start and how did you get here?
Oh gosh, I'm way healthier in my 40s than I was in my 20s. I mean, in my late 40s than I was in my 20s and 30s. And what kind of prompted me, well, I'd been in the field for almost 15 years, unfortunately, before I started to think, are these guidelines really helpful?
Yeah.
I had some serious bloating going on. I never had any like terrible weight issues, but I had to do a lot to maintain my weight. I was a mom of 3. I just thought, oh, I'm
Calorie thing.
the calories, the treadmill, like the running and all of the things. And I just thought, I'm getting older. I'm getting more burned out because I am a mom. And then this is just normal that you don't feel as well as you get older. And I had canker sores like exploding in my mouth all the time. So, that's kind of an immunity thing. And like I said, lots of bloating, and just having to work really hard to maintain my weight. And of course, I was following the standard guidelines of eating a lot of grains, eating, from the time I got up until the time I went to bed kind of thing, and having, healthy snacks. And come to find out, I didn't know this until a couple of years ago, but I developed insulin resistance, like pretty bad. And I don't know exactly, we can talk about the levels of fasting insulin, but I don't know even where I started from, because I had been implementing a lot of strategies to lower it for like 2 years, like intermittent fasting strategies and lower carb eating and not eating, only eating a couple times a day and all of these things. And my insulin was still elevated 2 years later. So I think I really had insulin resistance pretty badly.
So
know to test for it because nobody teaches you how
okay, so when were you measuring? Like what time, when was this? How long ago? Because getting an insulin level is hard.
Like, it is. I think I developed insulin resistance like in my 20s, like in college when everybody sabotages their body. And I live in Wisconsin, so it's like drinking party culture, terrible. But I just tested it for the first time, like maybe 4 years ago or so. And it was 10.7. And I like to see it between 2 and 6 optimally for my community that I work with. And this was after 2 years of, like I said, like time restricted eating low carb. So I think it was like probably in the 20s. I can only guess.
Much higher. Yeah.
Yes. And the interesting thing is I'd always had normal glucose, normal lipids. Of course, my cholesterol is a little bit elevated by conventional standards.
What does that mean?
Right. It was slightly over 200, but all my breakdown was always normal. Triglycerides were always normal. And so but I had a lot of the symptoms of insulin resistance, and I didn't piece everything together until a couple of years ago. And it's now in the normal range, and all of those symptoms have gone away. And now I teach everybody about it. But it was just in the last couple of years. So I went probably 20 years of being insulin resistant and not knowing, and being of normal weight and in the healthy weight range. And because a lot of people think, well, I'm not overweight, so I don't have insulin resistance, but I have like
based on symptoms you were.
Yes, based on symptoms it was. And I had type 2 diabetes and fatty liver runs very strong in my family. So I'm genetically predispositioned for it.
Right, for sure.
But yeah.
So it was based on symptoms, not necessarily labs, because I find that middle-aged women may not even have any of these markers.
Yeah.
Right? And you're dealing with this all the time because of hormonal.
Yeah.
Blood sugar's low in a lot of these people. Estrogen increases that sensitivity.
Yeah.
So how do you treat this? This is kind of a
it's interesting.
It's interesting
case, and it's definitely. So I've been teaching like intermittent fasting and low carb are the two biggest strategies to heal insulin resistance, because insulin resistance is your body's either not utilizing the energy properly that you're taking in, and those cells that are always trying to bring in glucose from the bloodstream are just not receptive anymore. And so you get this buildup of insulin, which insulin is secreted in response to blood sugar, glucose. So if you have, and the interesting thing is you can have normal blood sugar, which is what was happening to me, but you're getting some spikes and you're getting some dips and you don't see those because insulin is pushed out. So, in response to what's going on with the blood sugar. So it can, you can have insulin resistance for years, decades before. By the time blood sugar issues come on the scene, like you've been a long time and it's going to take a while to reverse the insulin resistance. But so with me, I've been eating a lot of grains and the things that the American and the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics tell you to eat. And like I said, I was eating very healthy foods, like whole foods, but I was eating them all day long, handful here, handful there.
Snacks.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. And did you have any gut issues with the whole grains?
Yeah, I had bloating really bad. And I attribute that to a couple of things. The grains, definitely. I mean, I just don't, now that I've like worn continuous glucose monitors and you can see, like, I just don't, like, my carb threshold at any one given time is about 30 grams. And it probably was better when I was younger, but I'm sure I'm 48. Like, there's no way I'm not perimenopausal.
Right.
Hormonal fluctuations, the insulin sensitivity isn't as good. So definitely bloating, and some of it was grain based, but some of it was also adrenal based. Like, I've found out since too that I had cortisol issues for a long time. I mean, just like a hormonal mess. And but and
you measure that in your patients now, huh? You measure cortisol. That's a big part of it.
With treatment. Some of them, like especially like if the symptoms are there, like the severe fatigue, the night not being able to sleep well, the bloating, the low immunity, those are some real telltale signs. And then like abdominal fat is another telltale sign of like cortisol that's dysregulated. Then I'll have them test it. So I mean, we could talk about testing, but there's testing for insulin resistance, and then cortisol is interesting. Cortisol and melatonin, because they're actually upstream hormones from insulin. So if those are dysregulated, so this is like, I've pieced this all together over time. Like, I started with the insulin resistance and I reversed that. But then I discovered I have cortisol issues as well. So really, if you can, fix the cortisol issues, that will help. You
ladies are complicated. I know. Incredibly complicated. We don't appreciate that.
I know. And it is more complicated with women for sure. I mean, men can definitely experience insulin resistance, but it's usually a little bit easier to fix with men because they don't have the fluctuating.
They respond so much faster. I hate to say it.
And the fasting protocols, like, I would just, put out these fasting protocols, and then I found women were struggling if we were doing too much fasting in the morning hours, and then their circadian rhythm was getting off balance. So I really had to like pull back and say, okay, with a lot of women, we need to do circadian fasting. We need to, fast with the sun and not be like fasting all morning, because that can dysregulate the cortisol, and it can with men as well. But yeah, men are not nearly
right. So how do you know? I mean, what tool do you use to be able to look at the circadian rhythm a little bit more carefully?
Yeah, if somebody I love to look at cortisol and melatonin. Like, those are kind of your master hormones as far as your circadian rhythm goes, and they should be flexing at different times, and they don't really play nice together. Like, one, no kidding. If one is high, the other one tends to be low. In a good way, because they do the very opposite things. Like, your cortisol is like your get up and go and wake up and be alert. And a lot of times people think like cortisol is bad. Like, cortisol is not. Like, you want cortisol.
You have to have it.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want that.
But you don't want it spiking at 2:00 in the morning because you're a shift worker. Exactly. Shift workers are the worst. They're really difficult to dial in.
They're a metabolic mess. But and it's like I just, like, my mom passed in February, and she was a nurse and worked all kinds. Like, I'm piecing everything together now, and her circadian rhythm was probably destroyed for most of her life. But yeah, the cortisol should be high in the morning and in midday and then start to come down. But with a lot of people's cortisol is dysregulated, and then your circadian rhythm is dysregulated because cortisol is, you know, in response to our lighting environment. Mostly, a lot of times people think, you know, your cortisol is regulated by stress and your nutrition. And yes, those things play a role, but the lighting environment is really critical to get under control. And this, you know, this is super fascinating, but this has been like in the last like 6 months that I've been really focused on lighting environment, because it's a component that is missing. And most practitioners don't talk about it at all. They talk about exercise and sleep and nutrition and stress.
Nothing to do with like going outside.
Lighting environment. Right. And so anyway, the cortisol, yeah, you want higher in the morning and midday and come down. And so many people dysregulate that. And if you have high cortisol at night, due to a lot of times due to blue light or, you know, overstimulation at night, staying up too late, watching TV, that blue light filtering in your eyes will elevate the cortisol. Your melatonin can't take over. And that's your restorative. Right. I mean, the body's most potent antioxidant is melatonin. And so people are just basically melatonin deprived. And the fix isn't to take melatonin out of bottles. You know, the fix is to fix the lighting environment.
I can just see people making these artificial lights that kind of dial in with where you are on the planet and how much light you're supposed to have, instead of actually going outside. Yeah. I mean, if we're in artificial light all day, you know, and we're Netflixing till 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning and we're getting all this blue light, it's just kind of this, and I'm tired. I don't want to do anything. So I'll stay up to 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, totally screw off your circadian rhythm.
Yeah.
But I think the CGM really helps with dialing in that little bump of cortisol. And what's crazy is we were taught, you and I were both taught, fasting glucose, lowest blood sugar of the day. Like, first thing in the morning? No. First thing in the morning, maybe the highest glucose of the day because of that cortisol that makes you get up and go, right? And here we are, we have no clue until you have that CGM on.
Yes. And that's how I found out my cortisol was really dysregulated, was the CGM. So I had worn a CGM multiple times, always really great blood sugar control until like last summer. And this was when my mom was diagnosed with cancer. So I was like, oh, it's because I'm going through a stressful time. And maybe that, you know, precipitated it a little bit. But I put a CGM on and my morning blood sugars were like in the hundreds, 110. I'm like, what?
Right.
What? Right. I'm like the blood sugar insulin resistance lady and I have high morning blood sugars. What is going on here? And so I'm like, oh, it's got to be because and my mom was just diagnosed and I'm stressed out or whatever. And so I did not wear one. Like I was kind of afraid to put one back on. But later on,
you're like, what you might find.
And I'm like, just the morning ones. And so then I'm like, oh, it's the dawn effect. Well, it was, but it was my cortisol, like, just going crazy throughout the morning because I was fasting almost every morning. And then I started to eat around 10 or 11. But when I was first intermittent fasting, I was fasting till like noon, sometimes 1, 2 o'clock, which totally went against my circadian rhythm. And I'm an early riser as it is. So I would get up between 5 and 6 and I wasn't eating until, 6 hours later. And for insulin resistance purposes, that can be helpful, but it can also dysregulate the cortisol, which is what happened with me. Right. And so I put a CGM on again this spring. And again, like things were crazy. I was going to appointments with my mom. She was in hospice. Like it was just a crazy time.
And you never put her on one, right?
No, I don't think she ever wore one that I remember. She was never, it's like she was never pre-diabetic. She had fatty liver, but she was never, the only way you get, it's maddening. Like have to type 2 diabetes to get.
So stupid. Everybody should have one.
I know. I said, if everybody could just wear one for 2 weeks, I feel like a lot of our medical problems would go away.
Right.
Or, people would have.
You'd be enlightened and aware of what's going on.
Yeah. So then I put a CGM on again, like a company wanted me to do some CGM testing for them. So I put it on, I'm like, oh, it's still high. Like it's still high in the morning. And so it was very, very frustrating because when I would eat, then it would come back down. And people ask me about this. When I eat, it comes back down. I'd be like, oh, let's just keep working on it. But it's cortisol dysregulation, and that cortisol just kind of going a little bit too crazy in the morning and staying high, and that cortisol response, trying to bring your blood sugar up. And I don't think that this happens right away when you're intermittent fasting, but like I had been doing it for like 5 years at that point. And so it's kind of crazy because I take to my courses, like make sure you're fasting for your hormonal cycles and your menstrual cycles, but I wasn't always practicing it myself. And now I'm a lot more careful to protect my hormones. But so I've been working on my own cortisol dysregulation because mine got to the point where it wasn't like high at night, it was like flatlined. And that's like even worse than having, that's like adrenal exhaustion. And so I've been really focused on the circadian and the lighting and getting outside, working outside whenever I possibly can. And really, I've been eating earlier. And if I'm going to fast, I don't have weight to lose. I don't have insulin resistance anymore. So I don't need to do as much intermittent fasting as I used to do. If I fast, it's through dinner and usually a couple times a week. So I'm still practicing like time restricted eating. I don't snack. I don't drink or eat anything sugary in between I only eat meals. So still a lot of time restricted eating going on, but I did pull back on fasting throughout the morning so that I can regulate cortisol.
So you changed your eating pattern to match your cortisol. Do you use a Dutch test or what other tools
you can use a
help?
Dutch test? I'm not an expert in reading Dutch tests. I've had those done, and my daughter has had those done. They are very like you need to be an expert to read those. There's a lot going on with the Dutch test, but yes, you do the saliva test. When you do a Dutch test, you do the dried urine in addition to the saliva test. So what I recommend for my community students I work with is a 4-point saliva test. A lot of times people will get their cortisol. I'll say, well, they get their cortisol tested, but they just get one reading in the morning, and it can be blood or saliva, but that's not going to tell you what is going on throughout the day. So you might have high cortisol in the morning, and that's normal, or it might be higher than normal. You're getting an over exaggerated cortisol response, but we don't know what's going on the rest of the day. So we don't know how to time your food. We don't know how to time other things that need to we need to see the entire pattern throughout the day. So with a 4-point, they'll do like a morning one, and like a noonish one, like midday, and then afternoon, and then evening. So then you can see if that cortisol pattern is rising and falling when it should, and you can kind of adjust, because otherwise you don't know how to adjust your environment and your lifestyle and your eating if you don't know what your cortisol pattern is.
Okay. So when you notice people have this dysregulation of cortisol, say it's spiking later in the evening, what is your recommendation?
Yeah. So if it's spiking in the evening, usually there's a couple of things that might be happening. Usually it has to do with artificial lighting. There's too much blue light coming into the eyes, and that tells the body it's midday to produce cortisol. So it's a simple fix. Well, it sounds simple in theory anyway. But, get the blue light out of your eyes after sunset. So at the sun sets, you block the blue light coming in your eyes. And so I just wear blue light blocking glasses after sunset. That's not something you want to wear outside. I mean,
no kidding. Yeah.
Outside, you shouldn't be wearing glasses or anything. Like you just want to get that full spectrum of sunlight into your eyes, no matter what time of the day it is. But I block blue light. I go to bed I go to bed at about the same time. I kind of have my ritual when I'm home, of course. I'm usually asleep by 9:30, 10 o'clock. And that kind of sets that pattern. But if you have a rise in cortisol at night, it's usually due to blue light or overstimulation. Sometimes even if it's not blue light, it's just overstimulating the body, whether it's, you're exercising intensely or or even if you have blue light blocking glasses on, sometimes people are like scrolling or watching a action movie. Not that you can't do those things every once in a while, but if you do it every night, you can develop that pattern. And the other thing that can be really overstimulating at night and bumping up the cortisol and insulin is snacking and night eating. Like that can be hugely detrimental also. And I know it can be a really hard habit. Like I used to, before I knew all this, like, I'll have, a little popcorn. I'll have like apple and peanut butter, or I'll have, ice cream once in a while.
Right.
And yeah, it's like you're just stimulating your pancreas, and your pancreas thinks it's daytime.
It's coming.
You're just whole your digestive system should be shutting down at nighttime and not having to digest. Food digestion, as you know, I mean, it's very intensely taxing for the body.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. So
I see that you wear a watch too, right? You wear a watch. You have a watch on.
I do.
That kind of helps you determine what your chronotype is, how your sleep morphology is, how that gives you some feedback if people want to dial in. And yeah, you're right, the cravings are out of control. But if people want to dial in their sleep better, you're getting some feedback along with this sleep hygiene, right? No screens, colder room, going to bed at the right time. Yeah.
So the darkness and the temperature drop are really like huge, the biggest triggers for the body. Like it's time to go to sleep and it's time to rest and digest. But melatonin, melatonin is produced in the pineal gland, only about 5% of it though, but it's produced in response to darkness. So yeah, if you're staring at screens, you just don't get that signal to produce melatonin. And melatonin, like I said, it's so restorative, and it's a major, huge antioxidant in the body. And if you're not getting that restorative sleep, it just ties back to everything. You feel like crap, but your blood sugar is not as regulated. You're like one poor night's sleep, like 5 hours or less, is like makes you 50% more insulin resistant. It's crazy for the whole entire day. And people wonder why they want to eat more and they want to snack. And then it's just this perpetual thing. So they're eating all day and they eat into the night, and then their insulin's high and they can't sleep. And it's like simple fixes. It really is. And that's the good thing. It's like people think, oh, my body's broken. I'm just a metabolic mess. And yeah, you very well could be, but it's usually your environment. So it's food timing, it's what you're eating, it's your lighting environment and your circadian that really throw off your metabolic health for sure.
Yeah. That's I always tell patients, like, this is your superpower. Sleeping is what sets up the best day ever. And you talk about 5 hours of sleep. Your immune system, your killer cells, natural killer cells, are decreased by 50% if you get 5 hours of sleep. This is all from that book, Matthew Walker, about why we sleep. Super fascinating book. I mean, it's
sleep is fascinating.
I love it.
And people are like, oh, sleep's boring, that's overrated. And I've heard sleep is foundational. But once you actually get it dialed in and you get your circadian health dialed in, I mean, that was when my bloating like truly started to go away too. And my adrenal health started to recover, was when I really started to focus on, correcting my lighting environment more. And I still get, like, my husband still looks at me goofy when he sees my red light, my red light.
Why you got the glasses on inside, girl?
I don't care. I sleep tonight. I don't care.
Right. This makes for a great tomorrow. So what do you do? What about this UVA?
Yeah.
Getting out and getting some sun. What's your recommendation with the UVA?
And great sleep starts in the morning. Like, people think like, oh, it's just my bedtime ritual. No, it starts in the morning. So sunrise, you get the red light into your eyes, and that just triggers a cortisol response. But the thing that a lot of people don't know too is, like, if your cortisol is really high in the morning, it can kind of help to mitigate that really high cortisol response. And if it's low, it can help to increase it. So it's kind of doing either or, kind of whatever your body needs with that sunrise. But then UVA rise is usually about 2 hours or so. Well, maybe about an hour after sunrise. And it's usually about 2 hour time frame. And I don't know if I use the circadian app to see when the UVA rises and the UVB rises. I'm in Wisconsin, so I'm like northern latitude. There's like
5, right?
Out of the year that I do not get any UVB here. But UVA is really interesting. And of course, I'm not like a complete expert on this or anything, but that's when serotonin, like the UVA, it's a time period, like usually early to mid morning. And if you can get outside, even if you can't get your skin exposed, like get that sunlight in your eye and get the UVA rise and be active, it helps with just so many hormonal cascades are triggered, and including serotonin. So your serotonin production starts to increase. And of course, that's your feel good. You know, people just associate it with the happy hormone, the feel good hormone. But you immediately, like when people are outside in the morning and exposed to light, even if it's cloudy or raining, you still get the benefits. You just feel better.
It's going to be a good day.
Yeah. And the thing about
serotonin,
and the thing about serotonin is it's kind of stored up during the day and then it's converted to melatonin at night. So it's like a precursor for melatonin. So if you want like really great sleep, you want to be outside at all these different times. And I know people are probably sitting there like, oh my gosh, like, yeah, if I worked at home, I could do all these things, but we're not talking about, you know, having to go outside every day. I mean, we're talking about like, you know, when my son's in school, I'm rolling down the window on my way to school, my car window, so I can get that lighting message into my brain. You can open your window at home. You can go outside for 2 minutes every, 2-3 hours, just for your body to get that correct lighting message. But that UVA rise is really super interesting. And the other thing about the UVA rise, like, so right now, we're recording in June. So I get I actually
long
have
days.
Long days. We're at almost the longest time of the year. And we have a ton of UVB here in Wisconsin right now. And like, I have a nice tan, but I haven't burned at all year. And the key to that is to go outside in the morning light when it's not as bright and it's not as intense. And that UVA kind of acts like as a primer to kind of prime the body, prime the skin for what's coming later, that and more intense UVB light that gets us tan and helps us to, make vitamin D as well. But it's like a primer, like it primes your body for that more intense light coming. So if you're one of these people who hardly ever goes outside, and then all of a sudden it's a nice day and you go outside at noon and you lay out for an hour or two, of course you're going to burn, because your body's like, what the heck? Like, I thought I didn't know it was June. I thought it was 72 degrees I'm sitting in 72 under artificial lighting all the time. I have no idea what time of the year. So much of metabolic health is just, syncing yourself back up to what's natural and normal, what humans are supposed to be. But UVA and UVB is fascinating. But if you can get out even for 5-10 minutes during that UVA rise, it's helpful.
I may change my regimen here. Maybe do some paddling earlier in the morning. I think 5:30 is sunrise. At least that's what they tell me.
Yeah.
So 7:30, 8-ish, a couple hours afterwards.
Yeah, our sunrise is super early right now. It's like 5:05 or something. And UVB this morning, I checked on the app. It was like 6:18 to 8:12, and it changes.
Yeah.
It changes all the time.
16-hour days. Forever.
And then that UVB was like, it's like a 12-hour window right now, which is really nice. But it's the time of the year. But yeah, the app really helps because I just
downloaded it.
All right.
Yeah. I'm like, I got to look at this. This is interesting. I didn't know there was an app for it. So that was cool.
Oh,
I think it's Circadian app is what it's called, right?
Circadian app. Yep.
Yeah. I just
and there's a free version that I just use the free version. So it tells me when all of these things are occurring. And right now I'm taking full advantage of storing up the vitamin D in my body, because there's many months coming that I won't get any UVB.
So you do a lot of fasting, intermittent fasting, recommending this to your patients. Is there, for the average listener here who's cycling, okay, a woman that's cycling, what does your recommend as far as like when in her cycle should she be doing the fast and when she shouldn't be? What
Yeah.
what have you found? Because this is your wheelhouse. You've been doing
Yeah,
this for
I
a
get
long
this
time.
question a lot. And like I said, I wasn't particularly as careful as I should have been. And I didn't like my female hormones. I'm 48. I'm still cycling every month, which I'm like, okay, it's going to
Any day now, right? Done.
And I'd be okay with that. Like, I want to keep my hormones, but you know.
Right.
But yeah, so day one is when you start the bleed. So you typically, for most women, from day one when they start the bleed up until ovulation, which is roughly days 10 through 14. There's some women have symptoms where they kind of know ovulation is coming in, some don't. But that is the best time to do a little bit more fasting and a little like women tend to handle if they're going to do some longer fasts. I don't recommend a ton of long fasts. But if they wanted to do like a 24-hour fast or a couple 24-hour fasts during those weeks, that works well. Usually the week before your menstrual cycle tends to be the hardest. Like I don't really recommend a lot of intermittent fasting and not longer fasts during that time, just because progesterone is rising and you're hungrier. Like you're priming, your body's thinking it's priming itself for a baby. So that's just a hard time to fast, and a better time to just do your time restricted eating and sometimes some carbohydrate flexing that week can be helpful too. And when I say carbohydrate flexing, I'm not like,
what does that mean?
Going from 100 grams to 300 grams. It's like, you know, I usually sit for carbohydrates somewhere between 75 and 100. That's just kind of, I'm comfortable. So I'm not like, I'm not extremely low carb. I'm not keto by any means. Some days I probably am. I don't really count, but I'm more of a liberal low carb. But I don't have weight to lose. I don't have insulin resistance anymore.
You probably have a hard time getting into ketosis, don't you?
I don't really, honestly,
I
don't measure ketosis that often, but yeah, I mean, I can like the signs that I know I'm in ketosis, like I can feel it in my mouth, like the taste of it. I can, yeah, and then I get cold too. Like those are kind of two things that happen for me. But yeah, so I might flex up to like 125 grams of carbohydrates. Like usually I'm saying, let's flex somewhere between 15 and 30 grams of carbohydrate. It's not like we're not eating like a cake or
right.
And we're adding like
not
some
going nuts.
Potatoes. We're adding, you know, some different higher, you know, starchier foods for a day or two. Because yeah, the whole point of like the courses that I teach is to make you metabolically flexible. It's not for you to be in ketosis all the time. The problem most people have is they're only carb burning, right? They're eating too many carbs. They have glycogen stores that are maxed out a lot. And so they never get to the point of needing to fat burn. And that becomes a problem. So you kind of break your metabolic machinery is kind of what I like to say. So we want to be able to burn fat. We want to be able to burn carbs. And there's, you know, you want to flex back and forth. So what I typically am teaching people in my courses is to lower their insulin levels and get your body used to burning fat. And then we cycle in some carbohydrate days so that your body doesn't forget to burn, you know, how to burn carbs either. It's you want to be able to burn both fuels. And that's how, you know, humans evolved for thousands of years. And now we just have so much carbohydrate available to us. And we're eating things that are, first of all, not meant to be eaten. We're eating foods that aren't foods. And then we're eating things that are so far from our natural environment that our bodies just get so confused. They're like, what the heck? What is this food? And then, you know, what am I supposed to do with it? And so it just becomes so problematic over time. But that's going back to the menstrual cycle. That's typically what I suggest is, and then the time between ovulation and then starting to bleed again, like that week before the period's kind of out, but some women still feel okay. Like that
to
kind
continue
of week. Yeah. Like from like day 14 to 21 ish, they can kind of depends on the person. I can tell I get a little bit hungrier like that week before, and then I usually back off with my strength training a little bit. I just am not as intensely exercising. I do more walking that week, and that helps to just protect the hormones and protect your sleep and protect.
So athletic performance is definitely going to go down when progesterone levels are elevated.
It can. Some people, some women notice it more than others. I'll be honest, I don't work with like a lot of like really high level athletes. I'm working with people who are pretty metabolically broken. And so I don't see that a whole lot, and a lot of times we're just trying to reestablish a regular menstrual cycle because fertility has been very compromised because the metabolic health is so terrible and that's so broken. So just getting them fertile again is huge, because that's just a sign that your body is so much healthier and you can conceive. Because if you don't have your fertility, that should be a red flag to any woman. Like if you're not cycling, like if you're of cycling age and not cycling, that can be one of the primary indicators that we've gotten your body a lot healthier and reestablish some healthier patterns for sure.
Do you deal with people with PCOS?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah. Okay. How does that? Is that pretty rewarding? That must be. It's kind of a riot. It's kind of fun.
I will tell you, my daughter will be 21 in a few weeks, and she's struggled with PCOS for probably 5 years, and we didn't know it until about 3 years ago. And she's been like one of my biggest works in progress. PCOS is very challenging, and it can differ from woman to woman for sure. But a lot of times insulin resistance and circadian health is at the root cause of it. And she also had really high cortisol levels in the morning. So you can be a little bit of a metabolic disaster with PCOS, but there's hope. Like and a lot of people are predispositioned for it. But again, it's our environment that sets you up to develop these very modern diseases that weren't a problem 100 years ago, 200 years ago. And it's interesting because, hundreds of years ago, women who are predispositioned for PCOS would probably have done better than those who were not, just because hormonally, they were more sensitive. But in our modern day and age, it's very common. I think it's somewhere in the woods of 15 to 20% of younger generations developing PCOS, and it's a frustrating disease, but you can a lot of times.
Frustrating to watch.
Yeah.
I go to Walmart, trip to Walmart, and I'm like, or anywhere in public, you're like, oh man, I wish I could tell you. I wish I could tell you that, hey, you have a significant insulin resistance problem here. This is fixable. You don't have to have the acne, the facial hair, the balding, the acanthosis. You can actually be fertile, right? Like, and this is, it's almost the simplest thing ever.
Yeah.
Is to all of a sudden make somebody from infertile to fertile.
Yeah.
And what a rewarding thing to do.
Yes. And the very frustrating thing about the conventional medical system is if you go to your doctor and you say you have these symptoms, what are they going to do? You know what they're going to do. They're going to say, let's put you on the pill to regulate your period. Yeah. All that does is mask your hormonal issues, throws off the messaging from the brain to the ovaries, that's cut off. And then you want to have a baby, and it's your hormone issues are still there. They're just exacerbated. And then what do they do from there? They send you to a fertility clinic. And so it's just
what a waste.
It's such a waste. And really, lifestyle and fixing your environment is what your food environment, your lighting environment, and your circadian environment, that's what's going to help you get fertile again.
Yeah, I'd imagine 20% of the population becoming fertile. I mean, we would kind of fix this population implosion problem just by fixing the fertility issue, right?
Yeah, fertility issues are devastating.
Another drug they put people on is spironolactone. So now I'll to try to decrease testosterone. These women are walking around with more than normal levels of testosterone.
Yeah,
and they're wondering why you got hair. Like,
huge issue. And yeah, men are lacking testosterone and the whole
Too much
testing.
estrogen.
Yeah, well, that, yes.
And then,
And then the testing, the normal ranges are changing because we're so sick. They just keep changing the normal range. The testosterone ranges are now like a third the normal range of what they used to be.
we're sampling a sick population and we're saying that these are the cutoffs.
Exactly.
So wrong.
It is. And it's, sometimes it just seems like such an upward battle and upward climb, but it is, like you said, it's so rewarding at the same time. And I mean, to get somebody from not fertile to fertile it's a huge blessing.
And what the part that's frustrating, because I go to the gym and that is, it's takes all my power to not speak up, because I just see these people that are so frustrated. They're doing the treadmill, they're doing everything that they shouldn't be doing, and they have these young, ripped personal trainers helping these old people, and you're like, it's not going to work. Whatever advice you're giving these people works for you, but not for them.
Yes.
This is not appropriate.
It's our terrible guidelines. Like, it's not people's fault. It's a terrible guidelines. It's a terrible environment that we expect them to get well in. And I mean, we're just so stuck on exercise more, eat less. And so, like, I think you're so right. I see this all the time on like my Instagram accounts when I'll post something about like, you need to fix your hormones in order to fix your metabolic health. And, you always get the young trainers like, oh, it's just reduce your calories. That's all you need to do. It's like, yeah, those are like young men in their 20s trying to tell women who are perimenopausal how to fix their hormones. It's like,
those guys can take pizza and garbage and create anything they want.
No, my sons are almost 19 and 6. Like, I can see what their metabolic health is crazy because they can eat all the junk right now, and they're
just wait, boys. Just wait till you get that belly.
You can get away with that right now, but I'm just teaching you what when it catches up with you. I don't know. My husband is 49, and I mean, things have caught up. He was always the same. Like, his metabolism is just crazy. He's never had to worry. It's like he weighed the same within a couple of pounds of what I met him until like probably 3-4 years ago. And not that he like had all these huge changes, but he definitely has to be, at least be mindful of it.
Don't eat that crap in front of me. Right.
Oh gosh. So I tell my boys, I'm like, well, we grew up in a different environment than you did, even though, so it's probably going to catch up with you sooner.
Eventually. It did to me. I mean, I was like skinny as a rail. I mean, I could not put on weight, and I was eating these protein shakes. Couldn't figure out why I was losing weight, because it made me bloated and just ripped right through me. I ended up becoming dehydrated, and I couldn't put on muscle to save my life.
Yeah.
I was like, but I would say now that I've fixed my fueling issue, I'm stronger and healthier now than when I was in my 20s. I can't run as fast, and I certainly wouldn't want to run like I was running before, long distances. Like, that's, to me, almost seems silly. But it's just the pounding, the pavement, right?
Yeah.
That's why I feel like the paddleboarding, which is a low impact sport, it's the same thing. You're getting your cardio, you're getting your balance, you're getting your core workout. It's been kind of like, that was like, hey, how can I fuel my body to create the best older athlete? And I think we're both trying to create the same thing in these older people. How can we create a better older athlete, or a more functional grandparent or parent? Right? These are some worthwhile goals here. Like, not to run a marathon necessarily, but it's like functionality. How long can you hang?
Right.
How long can you do a squat?
Right.
Some of these like good ideas are functional tests. Like, can you jump? Can you fall off of a step from such a height? Can you stop yourself from falling?
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
I used to run physical stuff too.
What was that?
Are you doing a lot of the physical training? Like, you're obviously encouraging exercise.
Yeah. It depends on the population and, kind of where they're starting at. And I used to be a distance runner as well.
You're a runner.
Marathons. I did lots of half marathons, and I don't do that. If I run, it's like once a week and it's low mileage. I mainly walk now, the zone 2, and I do strength training a couple of times a week.
Good.
And for me, for a woman who's 48, like it's just that, and I think a lot of that set me up for some of my cortisol dysregulation as well. Because what was getting up at 5?
Overtraining.
Yes. And at 5 in the morning, that's when I would go, because that's when, you know, I could run with my running buddy. But yeah, it's so important. And so I mentioned my dad just coming out of the hospital. He's 76, so he's not like really old. I mean, he's old by some people's standard, but you know, he had a very physical job his whole life. He was very strong. And you know, I remember like my teenage male friends be like, wow, your dad's pretty ripped. I'm like, well, he lifts all day basically this job. But then he retired and he put on so much weight. You know, he kept eating like he was doing his physical job, and was getting older, and lost so much strength in the last year or so. And a lot of things have happened, but he fell. Like the reason he went to the hospital 2 weeks ago, because he fell, and he laid there for 20 hours from the time like his last visitor was there. He couldn't get to his phone. He couldn't pull himself up. And it just made me so sad. I'm like, oh my gosh, here's my dad who was like a horse, you know, a workhorse. And now he can't pull himself up from the bathroom floor. He couldn't crawl. He couldn't get himself. His core was so weak. And so now he's in rehab, but it just goes to show, like you said, like the strength class that I go to, a lot of it is just the activities of daily life that we're working on, maintaining the muscle strength, even if you're not looking to like build a lot of muscle strength, maintaining your muscle strength as you age. And so that's why I'm encouraging all my students and women especially to get some sort of strength training during.
Get off the machine.
Yes. Oh gosh, I know.
Get off the machine. Start lifting. What's crazy is that you can develop muscle at any age. And I think it was an interview with Peter Attia and Luke Van Loon. He was talking about like how people like, it's always some sort of event. They lose a ton of muscle very quickly. I mean, it's a lot of muscle in a short period of time. And it's so difficult to regain it.
Yes, it is. And it's like you see it yourself. I mean, there's been stretches where maybe I go a week and a half is about the longest I go without any strength training. If you're on vacation or you're sick or whatever it is. And it's like you go back even that first day and you're like, whoa, like I feel like I've lost some gains already in 10 days. And then, you take into consideration, like my dad was laying in a hospital bed for 11 days then. I'm like, I mean, hospitals.
That's not uncommon though, for people to be like bound down and they've been down there for several days even, and they're completely dehydrated and they can't get up.
Yeah, and then they go to the hospital and they're under all the fluorescent lighting. They don't go outside. They have no fresh air, and you know they're being woke up all night. It's like, and then the whole food thing that we talked about.
I've been waiting for that.
I was like, you know, this is about the worst environment you could be in. Like you're being monitored, and I'm thankful for that. But other than that, this is not a good place for you to be to get well.
But how much longer before they start using CGMs in the hospital? That's what needs to happen.
I don't know why it's so hard to get a CGM. In the European countries, a lot of them, they're over the counter. You can get them. And I work with a company where I can get them shipped to anybody, but it shouldn't be so hard to get a CGM because they're just so telling as to what's going on. And like, I wouldn't have known about my severe cortisol issues. And I educate people on blood sugar. You know,
like, you should know, right? I wish more dietitians knew, and there would be more people like you. Literally.
Well, and it's just when you're taught in the conventional system, you think that is what's right and true, but it's kind of crazy. It's like, I don't want to label, but there's a lot of overweight dietitians, and there's a lot of dietitians with eating disorders as well. So it just goes to show the industry definitely needs so much work. And until I came out of the conventional system, you kind of have blinders on, like with any system. I didn't know what I didn't know. And they tell you, like, so much a part of the training is you're the nutrition expert. You're the nutrition expert. Don't let, like,
Anybody? Yes. Some states have laws against that.
Yes. Well, yeah. And then, so you see behind my name, RDN, and they put that, it used to be just registered dietitian, and now they stick that N on there for registered dietitian nutritionist, because they want to protect the dietitians against, anybody else calling themselves a nutritionist. It's like, well, I retaught myself pretty much everything that I teach now. It's not that I learned this in school, I mean, I learned the biology and the biochemistry, but then you go out into your internship and you just teach what the academy has taught other dietitians to teach. And it's really sad. Calories, that's it. Yeah.
Trying to protect your livelihood, essentially. Right? It's like, hey, not everyone can give this advice. Only I am specifically designed to give food advice. And you're right. It falls on deaf ears when a dietitian is showing you pictures of food, showing this is what, and this is the size of the plate. It's this is so tiny. Look how tiny this is. Right. And you don't even give meal plans, which I think is awesome. Like, we don't need to worry about portion control. You're saying, hey, let your appetite and your food not be this stressful thing. Like, eating shouldn't be so crazy, but it's falling on deaf ears because people, it's not their fault. I agree. The dietitians, the pharmacists, the doctors, they're all being told something that doesn't work, and they're all wondering why they're overweight. Right. And it's not getting through to the patients. But someone like you is healthy. I'll be like, okay, now I'm listening. Tell me what you've done, because everyone always asks, hey, I want to know what you're eating. Walk me through one of your days. Right. Tell me what kind of life that you live. And here you are, like the example, and you're walking the talk. I love that. We need more people like you.
Nutrition should be so personalized. And some people get kind of cranky when I say, I don't have a meal plan for you in my course, because it doesn't teach you anything. It doesn't. I can give you a 2-week meal plan, and half the food you don't like. Some of the food is not going to be appropriate for you. You're not going to feel good eating some of it. Like, and some carb tolerance is different for everybody, and everybody has what they like to eat and what they don't like and what their preferences are. And again, it's like, okay, what happens when you get to the end of the 2-week meal plan? Then what do? You want to
repeat?
Want me to keep writing you meal plans? Like, no, I'm not doing that. And so, I teach you about macronutrients and what they do. And I teach you about how to regulate your blood sugar, because that is critical to how you feel all day long, and whether or not you're going to want to eat more food, and whether you're going to have cravings and binge and all this. Meal timing. And then, like I said, the lighting component is critical too, because it's going to help enhance your blood sugar regulation, or it's going to help to deregulate your blood sugar regulation. And what's interesting is, like, I'm trying to get this point across to more and more people. Like, you can take the same meal at the same time of the day, like eat it at 9 a.m. versus 9 p.m. and it'll have completely different effects on your blood sugar. Or and then the same thing, you can eat that meal under like harsh fluorescent lighting that's artificial. Eat the meal, and then you eat that same meal outside in the sunlight, and it's different effects because of how the body's going to take it up and utilize it. And so if people can just like understand these little practical tips of when you're eating your meal, what environment you're eating it in. And then of course the macronutrients play a role too. And then going even a step further, it's like, well, are you eating food that's meant meant for you locally? Because that can play a role too. It's like, if we're eating in the middle of the winter pineapples that are growing in Costa Rica, and we eat all these pineapples in Wisconsin when we don't have that lighting environment that supports it. And we wonder why our blood sugar skyrockets to 250. It's like, well, we're probably not meant to be eating that right now in Wisconsin. And that's
not in season.
It's not in season, and our body isn't kind of primed for it. So again, it just goes back to matching your body with your environment and being in tandem with nature. And it's just we've just gotten so far away from it, and we've made things so complicated. Like people want to say, well, so in your course, are you going to tell me exactly what I'm going to eat? No, I'm not. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give you targets. Yes, because we want to meet targets. And if we eat, protein and fat without much carbohydrate in the morning, that's going to help our blood sugar all day long. Yes, we want to do that, but I'm not going to tell you exactly what to eat all day, because you don't learn. And I will tell you, across the board, I'm always telling people to eat, whole food that's unprocessed. And I'm trying to, get them all off the crappy seed oils and that sort of thing. But beyond that, like, it's up to you. Like, you have to learn how to put your food together, or you're never going to be successful. If I'm just, shuttling out meal plans for you.
This is what you're going to eat today. It's Tuesday. This is what you're supposed to eat. Yeah. So tell me about your practice. Tell me about your practice, and then tell me a little bit about your book.
Yeah. So I used to see, I mainly have courses that I have people learn from, because I was doing a lot of one-on-one work and teaching people the same thing over and over and over. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to record it all, and you get all of it, and then you can apply it. And then what I do with my community members who are in my courses, I then have them download an app where they can text me or voice memo me and get in touch that way if they need additional help. And people, they do really, really well with that. So
one-on-one? Is that one-on-one with you?
The app is one-on-one. Yeah.
That's cool. Excellent. They have access to you.
Yep. They direct access to me. I used to do, my academy is called Low Insulin Academy. And I used to do the program live a couple times a year, and I might go back to doing that. I'm not doing that right now, but they get the app instead, and it's nice because they can join at any time. Then they don't have to wait like 2 months until I do the program again. And then I'm putting together a program right now called Family Foundations, because that addresses metabolic health for families. I've been trying to get that out for 2 years.
The kids are waiting. They need this. Every day there's more. The kids are getting fatter and fatter.
I get so sad. I substitute taught. That's another whole story for about 5 years when I was deciding if I wanted to be a dietitian or not. And I had pulled out of the conventional system. I'm like, I can't be a dietitian anymore.
Oh, this is where you belong.
Oh, and I did substitute teaching in the meantime. And it's just, it broke my heart. And the crap that they're taught in the schools too. And it's just a whole big mess. But Family Foundations will address metabolic health for entire families, because they need it. And it's just getting back to foundational things that we just don't do anymore. So that's how I work with people now. I have a podcast called Optimal Metabolism that, I just put out 186, I think.
Wow. Good for you.
There's a ton of information there. And then I'm really active on Instagram too. People learn a lot from my account. We just focus on blood sugar and optimizing our environment and optimizing metabolic health. So that's how people can work with me. And then my book, I actually published in 2020. So it definitely can use some updates, but it's mostly about getting started with intermittent fasting. And how, the science behind it and a lot of things that we talked about with fasting. But if you need to get started, it's called Fast to Heal. But yeah, that's how I'm working with people now. But yeah, that Family Foundations, I've been really trying to put out for a long time. My 2024 has been crazy with my family life.
With family, right? But man, you must be feeling pretty inspired as a mom, trying to help all these kids.
Well, I don't know if my kids are inspired by me.
No, but as a mom, you automatically, innately feel for these kids having a less than active life. It's just a life full of suffering.
Yeah. And even like really active kids. I know my boys were both very sporty and we just kind of grew up on the sports circuit. And there's so many like really active kids who are just missing certain components that are setting them up for poor metabolic health. And yeah, it's like if you are metabolically broken as a child, I mean, it sets you up for disaster as an adult. But it can be overcome. But I do think with kids, it's like you can't just like, oh, okay, we're gonna do all of these interventions for my one child. Like it's got to be a family involvement and a whole family situation that we make
from the parents, starting with the parents. Yeah, so they can get access to this course when you're ready. I'm sure. And that is going to be focused around the whole family working together to try to improve the health of.
Yes, it's so needed. It's so needed.
Hard to do with
a lot of the things that we talked about today. So focusing on nutrition and how to optimize nutrition without singling out your kids, and how to correct your lighting environment to be conducive to good blood sugar regulations and activity and stress and sleep, like optimizing sleep in your kids and screens and all of that stuff. It's just
so a whole lifestyle, like a whole different parenting lifestyle.
It's all lifestyle based for sure. Awesome. Yeah, because I get a ton of parents. Right now I've just been at my Low Insulin Academy is more adult focused, and there's just so many parents in there like, oh, my kids, like I don't know what to do. Like they're struggling. So yeah, and there's been so many people who've gone through Low Insulin Academy, and their spouse has like jumped on board and done so well. I love it. That's like my favorite thing.
It's nice when a couple works together and not sabotage each other.
And they're teaching their kids, and then the whole next generation is changed. And so that is like why I started my practice on my own. Is just, I'm like, if I can even just change a couple of families, I will I'll feel really happy.
Yeah, I can tell you have so much passion for helping people, and that's obviously why you went into this in the first place. Not to mention, like, you became a teacher. That's really cool. Like your heart's in the right place, and I'm sure that fuels you. That your results really fuel your passion to keep going and making more, creating more material and helping people get healthier and changing lifestyle. But yours is all encompassing. It's not just food. As a dietitian, that's odd.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
It's refreshing though.
Started, more food based, but now I know that it's not just food. Like food plays a huge role, but there's a lot of people who fix their food and they're just so careful about their food intake.
Right.
They've gone through the testing, they've gone through the food sensitivities, they've done all the things, and they're still missing something. And that's where we look more at like circadian health and the lighting and the food timing, like that is all right. Too.
But data driven. It's feedback, right? You got to know what's going on.
Time, like a lot of people think like the stuff can be woo woo and like, oh well, if I just have to watch the sunrise, what? Like that just seems too simple, right? But if you type in any PubMed or any search, and you put in red light therapy and diabetes or whatever it is, or watching sunrise and PCOS, you will see the studies are there. It's just the sunlight is free. It's a free therapy. And so it's not like it just seems too simple. Right. And
but it's still going back to what we are as humans. They're going, hey, let's go back 50,000 years. Like, what were we doing? We weren't an artificial anything.
No.
Right? I think carbohydrates are artificial all winter long, like what we're doing now. Even cooking, like that's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Some of this stuff, I got food available. It just ran by me. I'll be right back.
Well, carbohydrates require UVB light to grow. And so if we don't have that in our environment, we just shouldn't be eating a lot of that stuff. Right. And I think too, like that's where people, who are doing the ketogenic carnivore lifestyle, like there's definitely a time and place. And a lot of my students and community have seen good healing off this, but if they're doing it year round, they can get in trouble with that too, because now when we have a ton of UVB light and we should be implementing some of those plant foods that are local and natural to us, we can come out of that carnivore keto space a little bit more and cycle some more carbohydrates in. But then, yeah, you're right. Like winter, dark, that's not the time to be eating bananas and pineapple
at the gas station. Right.
Stuff that requires so much UVB light. And then here I am in Wisconsin getting no exposure, and I bring that into my body, and my body's like, what? Like, this does not my environment at all. So
especially as a white person,
but once it clicks, it's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
This isn't natural. This is what I should be doing. Thank you so much. This has been really fun. I mean, I never get to talk to a dietitian on this level. It's usually we're arguing about what kind of foods that you're trying to promote. So, and this is really refreshing. And so people can get a hold of you through your website as well as Instagram.
Yeah. So my website is actually being done as we record this. It's being redone. And right now it's fasttoheal.info, but it's going to be changing to shanahussinwellness.com. It's not live yet, but either, you put in either one and
you're going to find
get redirected to me. And then my Instagram is shana.hussin.rdn. So yeah. And my name is kind of strange. So you just put me.
Oh yeah. You're one of a kind.
You're going to
more than one way.
Find me. So
that's fantastic. So thank you for coming on. This has been fun. All right.
You're welcome.
You have a great day. Enjoy your 16 hours of daylight today.
Yes, it's crazy here. I've been taking full advantage, but this has been a fun conversation, and thank you for having me.
Thank you.